This is Amanda from the 36 LD Dems talking to, this is our endorsement interview for Nathan Rouse, who's running for city attorney for Seattle. Nathan, over to you for your intro.
Well, thank you, Amanda, and thanks to everyone on the call, as well as to the 36th Democrats. I am really excited to be able to chat with you all today and introduce myself to you, answer your questions. My name is Nathan Rouse. I'm running for city attorney here in Seattle, and I moved here in 2006 after growing up on the East Coast. I grew up in a Quaker family. I grew up with Quaker values, and moved to Seattle and have lived here ever since. And I love this city. And I particularly love Green Lake, Ballard, Central District, and Rainier Beach, because those are the four neighborhoods I've lived in since I moved here in 2006. I live here in Rainier Beach with my wife and two kids, and we use light rail. We love the South End, but I miss the North End. I am running for city attorney because I am a public defender in King County, and I'm very passionate about my job as public defender. But I'll tell you, working on the ground level of the criminal legal system in downtown Seattle, you see day in and day out the way that the approach to misdemeanor criminal prosecution by the Seattle City Attorney's Office is not helping anybody. It's not helping victims of crimes. It's not helping people that are charged with crimes. We need to change that system, and we can do so much better. That's my primary motivation for running, but also I am a very experienced civil advocate. I practiced at big law firms, as also a federal clerk at the district court here in Seattle, as well as at the Third Circuit Court of Appeals back on the East Coast. And we need to do everything we possibly can to sue Donald Trump, to be proactive, not reactive, to the federal government coming after cities like ours. We are a sanctuary city. We need to fight tooth and nail to protect our values here in Seattle. So those are the two main reasons I'm running for Seattle City Attorney.
Great, thank you. Our first question will be asked by Anita.
We would like to know more of your why and understand what experiences you bring to this role and how this informs how you will govern.
Thank you, Anita. I'll start once I see the timer so that I stay within the rules. There we go. So the why, that's a very important question. Thanks again, Anita. I mentioned this earlier, but I grew up in a Quaker family, and values of compassion for neighbors are central to the Quaker system. Compassion for each other, compassion for a community that cares about one another. I went to law school because I wanted to practice as a public defender. One of the things that happens when you go to law school is if you do really well, you get offered a good job. And I got off route from being a public defender, and I worked at a law firm called Davis Wright Tremaine. It was a fantastic education, fantastic experience. I worked in a lot of large scale civil litigation. But what I found myself gravitating toward more and more was public defense in a pro bono capacity. I did hundreds of hours of pro bono work on criminal legal issues while I was at Davis Wright Tremaine. And that is the type of work that I wanted to do. And along the way, I also got to work in two federal courthouses for two federal judges, as I mentioned earlier. When I became a public defender, I alluded to this a little earlier, but the visceral experience of seeing a client who does not want to be addicted to a drug like fentanyl, seeing that client be kicked out of a treatment program because they relapsed. That experience, seeing just the way that we are failing people, seeing victims of crimes who are not getting any answers from the prosecutors, calling me to ask about what's going on with the case. We need to change the way we respond to misdemeanor crimes in Seattle, because we can do so much better for victims of crimes. We can do so much better for the people that are caught up in the criminal legal system. We can use medication assisted therapies for drugs like fentanyl, and we need to do that now.
Great, thank you. And I'll go ahead and start the time when you start talking, so you can take a second to think if you want as well. Our next question will be asked by Chelsea.
We have three progressive candidates in the race. What are some differences between you and your opponents, and what makes you the best candidate to take on Davison?
I'm the best candidate because I have the biggest combination of experience of civil legal practice combined with criminal legal practice. On top of that, my criminal legal experience is as a public defender, not a prosecutor. And I'm going to tell you why I think that that is quite important. Prosecutors, I'm running to be a prosecutor, but I think as a public defender, seeing again the ways clients and victims of crimes are not getting what they should get from the criminal legal system, seeing that firsthand, being inside the jails with my clients who are mentally ill and addicted to drugs and not getting treatment while they're in custody, being in there with them in that capacity, seeing that viewpoint is so critical as a public defender. I think that that type of criminal legal experience positions me to be a better reformer of that office. So I think that the 7 years of federal litigation experience combined with state litigation experience as a civil litigator who's worked in federal courthouses, who's worked at big law firms here in Seattle. I'm also positioned to do things like sue Donald Trump, to work on complex issues involving our state laws and our city laws that protect immigrants and make us the sanctuary city we are. So that combination of experience of not only having civil and criminal, but having my criminal legal experience be as a public defender, I can be the person who's best positioned to deliver that reform. I also have a lot of momentum from folks in the community who are volunteering for my campaign. We've collected more than 4,000 vouchers at this point through the Democracy Voucher Program. It only took us 2 weeks to gather the $10 and the 400 signature contributions to qualify for that program. We're a volunteer-run organization.
Great. Thank you. Our next question will be asked again by Anita.
What do you think the city attorney's office is doing well? What do you think needs to be improved? And what key reforms or changes would you bring to the office to improve its mission?
Thank you, Anita. The city attorney's office is doing a couple things well. I'll tell you right off the bat. It's an office of 200 people with 135 attorneys. Those are hardworking, smart people that work there. So there's lots of capable people at that office. I'll give you a specific example of an action I think that the city attorney's office took recently that I think was good. There's a comprehensive plan that's being rolled out, and there was an effort to challenge that, and there were appeals filed against it. Ann Davison's office quickly moved to dismiss those appeals so that we can build more housing and make ourselves a denser city. We need that because we're in a housing emergency. So I think that there's a couple of things that they're doing well. What needs to not happen, here's a few examples of things that are not being done well. Eliminating community court 2 years ago without any replacement, and then letting the case log become overwhelming. There's backlog of cases. There it is, has piled up to the point where the city attorney's office is losing very, very important cases. There's a 70% dismissal rate for cases that are set for jury trial. 70%. That is astoundingly high. That needs to change. It means we're not winning cases that do things like threaten public safety with repeat DUIs, involve serious domestic violence allegations. Those are important cases. We have to position our attorneys to win those cases. What I would bring to the office is a much bigger focus on diversion programs. We need to use diversion programs for nonviolent crimes to make sure that we're not overwhelming the city attorneys that practice and limiting their ability to win those important cases, domestic violence, repeat DUIs. We need to understand that people are going to be back in the community and they need the treatment, and jail is not the answer for those types of crimes.
Great, thank you. And then our last prepared question will be asked by Chelsea.
The current federal administration has shown hostility towards cities and counties with progressive values like ours. How do you anticipate navigating and leading when facing urgent, complex, and dynamic challenges to civil rights, laws, funding, and so on?
Well, we need to fight tooth and nail to protect our values because Donald Trump is coming for Seattle. I think that that's clear. I think that we've seen that in other cities already. We only just passed the 100-day mark. We need to be proactive, not reactive. That means that we need to do things like the ACLU did. The ACLU spent months preparing lawsuits, researching state law, researching federal law to prepare for the avalanche of executive orders that got piled on after Donald Trump took office. The city attorney's office needs to do the same thing. We need to be ready for what comes down the pike so we're not just reacting. We need, again, we need to sue Donald Trump. We need to be the first one out there filing the lawsuits. Pete Holmes did that when he was city attorney over the sanctuary executive order during the first term. Ann Davison did not file that lawsuit that was challenging the sanctuary city order. She was later in the game. The city of Seattle joined that lawsuit after it had already been filed. And we need to be the first to file. We are a leader in that area, and Seattle needs to show that by filing these cases and standing up for ourselves. We need also to be prepared for things that happen if we do lose revenue, because the federal government is cutting revenue for critical programs. That means that the city attorney has to be a partner to the city council when we are going to need to pass progressive revenue. And what I mean by that is if the funding stops coming in from the federal government and we need to provide critical, housing funding, shelters, medication-assisted therapy for drug addiction, we need to have a plan for where that money is going to come from to stop those gaps. So there's going to need to be progressive revenue that's passed at the city level, and the city attorney needs to be ready to defend that progressive revenue because if there's a law passing progressive revenue, it may be challenged in the courts. So the city attorney needs to be ready to defend laws like that to make sure we're responding to the needs of the city.
Great. Thank you so much. That's the end of our prepared questions. So I'm going to open it up to folks here if they want to raise their hands in Zoom. If there are any follow-ups, any questions that we have from folks, I'll give it a couple seconds. Otherwise, I'll give you an opportunity as well to cover anything you didn't get a chance to, or you were cut off from your answers instead.
Yeah, unless folks have questions, a couple of other important initiatives that I want to advance are we need to create a victims compensation fund, because right now people that are experiencing property theft, property damage, small business owners, they need to have money to fix property damage, money to replace the things that were stolen. And we cannot look to people that are committing those crimes as a source of that money, because the clients that are represented by the public defender's office cannot afford to pay restitution to victims of economic crimes. We need to use revenue that we save from just blindly prosecuting people and give that money to the small business owners that are experiencing the harm. That's one way that I think victims of crimes are not getting what they really are entitled to from a city that cares about them. So a victims compensation fund is something that I would really push as the city attorney, and that's an important initiative that I wanted to address.
Great. Thank you so much. Really appreciate that. And unless I'm not seeing any additional hands, I will go ahead and conclude this interview, and this portion. I'll stop the recording.